is PTV World. I am Syed Shabahat Ali and you are watching Fault Lines. It should come as no surprise that China and Iran signed a 25 years agreement this week. It has been touted many times in recent years, although negotiations over the details have remained a secret. What is interesting, however, is the timing. It comes within 100 days of US President Joe Biden taking office and his desire to reconfigure American relationship with both the countries. Now it seems Beijing and Tehran have moved past the era of fearing US sanctions following the departure of Donald Trump. The strategic agreement covers multiple areas, including infrastructure, economy, military and defense cooperation. China has also agreed to join drill, port development in Iran, and $450 billion worth of investment in energy, petrochemicals, and other sectors. In today's program, we will find: has US lost Iran now completely? How will US view the heavy footstep of China in the Middle East? How is it going to affect the power balance in the region eventually? Our team has prepared a package. Watch the package before we bring our first guest to the program.
March 27th saw the culmination of a half-decade of negotiations between Beijing and Tehran, with foreign ministers meeting signing a 25-year $400 billion strategic and economic partnership. The specifics of the agreement are largely in line with China's ongoing Belt and Road Initiative, spending billions in infrastructure investment with an eye on long-term influence and economic and security hegemony. This has also opened a window for China to strengthen her position in the Strait of Hormuz. A strategic partnership between China and Iran has serious ramifications for the United States' strategy of working with OPEC, China containment, and the West's utilization of economic sanctions to pressure the non-cooperative nations. China is willing to do business with nations sanctioned by the Western democracies, which will send ripples in Washington, D.C. Not only this, India is going to be impacted in terms of geopolitics through this bold move, especially considering the fact that India heavily invested in Chabahar port, which was meant to protect her trade and geopolitical interests in Afghanistan, Central Asian states, and the region at large. With China constructing a new rendition of the Silk Road called the Belt and Road Initiative, it is going to bring new prospects for developing countries such as Iran and even Pakistan. Considering that Pakistan hosts the flagship BRI system, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, analysts think this new Sino-Iran deal is an expansion of the mega project CPEC, which will bring prospects to strengthen regional connectivity. Not only these three countries, but Turkey and Central Asian states are all in line to benefit from China's growing economic diplomacy. Some say China is eyeing prospects in Middle East and Africa as well. This, of course, is going to invite a reaction from the United States and, of course, from India. Even though Chabahar port was already invited as a sister port by Irani and Pakistani authorities and is set to fully operate from May 2021. With this new deal, how does it look for India, Pakistan, and the region at large? Also, seeing that this new deal comes after the recent Quad Heads of State virtual summit, how will it have an impact on global politics?
To join me in the first segment of program, I have with me Professor Ye Heelin. He's DG National Institute of International Strategies in Beijing, and Osama Rizvi, who is a freelance journalist and a political commentator based in London. Osama, welcome to the program. My first question: you see Chinese heavy footprint in the Middle East region now. The region has always been a center of a lot of political activities by the great powers. How do you see these developments today?
Thank you so much for having me. The thing is that although the Chinese-Iranian deal has been given a lot of importance, China, in fact, has been engaged in the region, and especially in terms to Iran, from quite a long time now. I say that because we all know about the GCPOA, which is informally known as the Iran deal between the US and the China, US and the Iran. So it is mainly supervised by a group of countries, which is P4 plus one, and China is a party to that. So I would say that the Chinese footprint or Chinese involvement in the region has already been there. Uh, in terms of the recent deal, now that China is legal, I mean, China has a legal binding now in the form of a deal with Iran now. It has certainly affected things, but I don't think that it is going to have that much of an effect. For me, it is a political posturing at an international level. We saw that how Trump behaved in his days, and China is sort of banking on the vacuum, diplomatic vacuum that Trump has left. So
Osama,
this
is
this deal.
United States losing its influence from the region? Is it China coming to rescue Iran's economy that is under a severe stress? Or do you think China is building the blocks in the right direction now?
So I would not say that US is losing influence. However, influence may be declining a little bit. Because we have to look at the bigger picture. United States of America has more than 700 bases all around the world, military bases, and their ships and their soldiers, they patrol the land and the maritime, both the aspects of global economy and diplomacy. So to say that US has been losing its influence is not the right way to put it. However, it is going to be a challenge for the US now to really get Iran back into the group. That is why you have seen last week the US administration and the Iranian administration sort of started a process of thawing their relationships in terms of the Iranian deal in Vienna last week. So now all these three countries are interconnected, very interconnected, because for China, which is now supposedly investing in Iran, because we don't know the details yet, uh, they will face a lot of trouble if the US and Iranian deal does not come through. So I would say that now the opportunity of cooperation between all of these three has increased. At the same time, the Chinese influence in the form of BRI, in the form of RCEP, which is another economic bloc in the Southeast Asia, is growing. However, it will take a long, long time to challenge the US authority in the region.
Osama, let's take a perspective from Beijing as well. Professor Heelan, United States and all other powers in the past have used their brute force to increase their influence. But China has been a very exceptional power. It is increasing its influence by building economic blocs, by developing partnerships, and by making the economic shareholding of different states with its overall global interest. How has this policy been beneficial for China?
Thanks, Chanhat Ali, for having me to this program. The global economy has been highly integrated. No one could flee away from a global market. President Donald Trump of the US tried to conduct a self-isolated policy named as American First to so-called protect Americans' labor forces. But 4 years passing by, his successor Joe Biden totally abandoned this suicidal policy and returned to the global arena. Again, it proved no one is an island. China sees the world in different perspectives. Firstly, China never doubt the globalization. For the last 40 years since the open reform policy, China always believed only through engaging the world market. Secondly, China believes that China could not become a developed economy without support from the global partners, particularly from his neighboring partners. In China, we call this shared destiny community.
Osama, have you seen the response from Beijing? We know that Iran is a state that has been under immense economic stress by the virtue of US sanctions that have increased over a period of time. We have seen that importantly, and rather most importantly, Iran's central bank has been brought under sanctions. Is this economic problem of Iran going to change Iran's attitude toward the world order?
That's very interesting, actually. That is very relevant to what is happening right now. So, as per the details quoted by some New York Times and other medias of other mainstream media, as of today, supposedly China will be investing $400 billion, which amounts to $16 billion per year in Iran. And we're talking about Iranian economy, and it is not only their economy actually. Recently, Iran has been facing a lot of domestic political issues, a lot of backlash from their youth, and we all know that Iran has one of the, or rather the largest youth bulge in the world, the largest youth population. So for Iran, a lot is at stake. However, regarding this deal, I would say that this is an opportunity for Iran to take a step back and rather have a very amicable stance so that, as we are discussing, the economic and I would say the domestic political issues get resolved. However, it is also interesting to note that this recent deal, which China has struck with Iran, it is called Comprehensive Strategic Partnerships (CSPs). So China has a similar record with the Saudi government, and they invested $5 billion. So we really have to see that whether China, because Chinese officials after the press conference, they weren't really able to answer the exact amount or the exact roadmap of their investments. So details remain blurry, hazy. So we really have to see if this will materialize in something that can benefit Iran economically. However, this is an opportunity for Iran because the US is now trying to get Iran back into its camp so that it does not lose it to China. So if Iran behaves in a rather diplomatic manner, it tones down its national
Okay, Professor
an
Helen,
opportunity.
I'm coming back to you. Can you tell me about this concept of putting sanctions by United States that US has been doing against all the countries that have stood against it, even economically or otherwise? US still has a very important position in the financial management regulatory mechanism of the modern world, and it has been taking steps against China. How do you think China is going to respond to it?
Just as what I said before, China won't fight alone. China will work closely with our partners to maintain the global value chain smooth and strong. We won't close our gate. American could not force us to shut down our door. President Xi Jinping pointed out China will conduct higher level opening up and higher quality development, not only aiming at addressing American attempts to hamper our economy, but also taking those as a long-term strategy to upgrade Chinese economy.
Professor, Professor, is this project not much bigger than the project that Pakistan has as a strategic partner of China? Our CPAC project is worth 64 billion US dollars, but this Iran project with, or the $450 billion now. How do you think Pakistan should be taking this development?
Pakistan is always Chinese major partner in economic cooperation context. CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, is a flagship project of BRI. Cooperation with Pakistan is our major priority. Iran is a major power in the Western Asia and the Middle East. We believe a strong Iran is our common benefit for China, for Pakistan, and for the other countries in this region. Stronger Iran economy will bring greater chances for foreign investors and a better environment for the Middle East geopolitical situation. China supports Iran, just like China supports any powers in this region who focusing on the economic growth. We believe closer partnership between China and Iran could be a positive factors for Pakistan economic development. Economic cooperation and coordination among China, Iran, and Pakistan would not only benefit all these three powers, but also serve the interest in this region.
Thank you very much, Professor Helen. Osama, your closing remarks on this. How do you think United States is going to respond to it? As we have seen, United States taking a lot of steps against, banning Chinese companies or doing the propaganda against the Xinjiang province or stuff like that. How do you see United States is going to move forward on that quickly?
Yeah, so very quickly, it's that now we have seen that there seems to be a domino effect in place. So it's very, as you, if you impose sanctions on Iran once again, it can bode very ill for Chinese authorities as well. And China would never want that now that they are in a pact with Iran. So it's there are three relationships between all these three countries, and all of the three equations are very perilously balanced at the moment. And I would say this is, for me, as I look at, is an opportunity for Iran, for China, and the US, for Iran and the US to settle their matters, for the Chinese and the US authorities to close off their trade war. Otherwise, if things go wrong, you will see all of these things happening once again, and the global economy would start. Yeah, there will be a sell-off, and
Thank you very
just
much,
as
Osama Rizvi from London, for taking out time for our program. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break here and we'll join back with the second segment of our program. Stay with us. Welcome to the program. With me in this second segment are two distinguished guests from Tehran. My first guest is Dr. Zainab Tari from University of Tehran. She is assistant professor. And Mustafa Khoshchasham. Mustafa is a foreign policy analyst based in Tehran. I welcome both of my guests to the program. Zainab, I'm coming to you for my first question. Tell me if we know any details of this agreement as yet.
We don't know about the details of the agreement. Both sides have published a text of joint statement on comprehensive and strategic partnership between Iran and China. And in that, we actually know that the agreement is it includes the large Belt and Road Initiative, and also it's actually trying to attract investment in various economic fields, including industry, tourism, cultural exchanges, information technology, and communication. So we still don't know the details. We know that this is a sort of roadmap for future relations between the two countries, and the details are not released yet.
Mustafa, what is the sentiment in Iran? Because Iran is under, I would say, rather worst economic sanctions to any country by United States. And as we discussed in our last program, there are people around the world who are questioning this. There are partners in Europe who are questioning this stance of United States against Iran. So how does the sentiment of public go after this massive economic development with China?
Hello, thanks for having me. Well, first of all, this is a roadmap. It has touched on, you know, developing cooperation between the two countries in various areas of IT, infrastructural development, investment, as well as the military cooperation and political and security cooperation. Basically, there is no details because this is just a roadmap and it needs to be signed by the Chinese as well in order to go for contracts, tangible contracts. The details that some people are talking about are about military agreements. They are, it's no contract. They have not started any kind of cooperation yet, but they have specified which areas they would like to, develop cooperation. All Iranian ministries, as well as other bodies, the military bodies, they have, worked on the needs that they have, and they think that the Chinese could help them with those areas, and they compiled this plan or this roadmap. So we need to wait for months or even more than a year before any kind of tangible agreement comes out of this. There have been some sample agreements that have been offered in order to, the two sides could understand each other better. But this doesn't mean that they are going to be done. Like in the refinery sector, as far as I know, there has been a sample agreement that Iranians have, offered to the Chinese under this roadmap. But it needs much time, to work on. But what matters here is that experts and policymakers as well as analysts from across the aisle, from the reformist camp to the principalists or the revolutionaries, they all support this agreement pretty strong because Iran has been in confrontation with the West. They've been trying to contain Iran's power. They've been shooing away all business and traders and business owners as well as investors from Iranian market that has been, that has remained a very lucrative market. Actually, it's called the best after the fall of the Soviet Union in the past 25 years. So it's very much lucrative, but Americans do not allow others to come to Iran to make investment in Iran. Now the Chinese, the Russians, and many others, they are feeling that the atmosphere is growing better, not because of the JCPOA, but the next government in Tehran is much expected to come from the principalist camp after President Rouhani failed in his project of mending ties with the West and resolving the
Mustafa,
differences
can
with
I
the
hold you
West.
here for a
So,
while? Dr. Zainab, tell us, is this a kind of an economic aid package, or is it a compensation for buying Iranian oil on cheap prices?
Well, no, it's not a compensation to buy Iranian oil, and it is not an economic aid package. It's an agreement based on mutual interest in mutual needs of the two countries. So, as you know, China has been Iran's largest oil customer, and still today it remains the only country which purchases Iranian oil despite U.S. sanctions. On the other hand, China is also a major supplier or major industrial supplier to Iran, and it has displaced Europe because Europeans actually have ceased or have stopped having like transactions with Iran. So it has displaced Europe, and it's actually supplying Iran with industrial parts and machinery which Iran needs for its growing manufacturing sector.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zainab Ghassemi, for your contribution in this program. Coming back to you, Mustafa Khushchesham, tell me, we know Iran has been developing its port with and taking a lot of support from India. India and Iran have been, partners in development, partners in logistics, and now when India has difficult relationship with China, perhaps the ever worst span of their relationship together, we see Iran and China making great progress with each other. How do you think this progress would be taken by India in context of its relationship with Iran?
Indians have lowered their cooperation and economic, trade ties with Iran because of the U.S. sanctions. Actually, despite their good cooperation in developing some infrastructural projects in ports in southern Iran, still like Chabahar. But still, this cooperation with the Chinese could help other rivals, or could justify other rivals like the Indians to join the Iranian market and disrespect or ignore the U.S. sanctions. Let's remember that the Chinese are the largest trade partner of the United States. They are also the largest trade partner of the Europeans. They signed a very, big size, a macro scale economic and trade and investment contract with the European Union just days before Biden came to office. And this was a lot because with Biden in office, they would mend ties and strengthen relationship within the NATO with the Europeans. So Washington is angry at the Europeans, but still they think of their own economic interests. So, trade ties and cooperation and strategic cooperation between Iran and China could justify other powers in this region, like the Indians, to rival with the Chinese and enjoy the merits of Iran's lucrative market. In the meantime, Iran and China could help each other bring stability to this region because the Chinese are not very much familiar with West Asia, and they need a very strong regional power in this part of the world who's in charge of security of the Strait of Hormuz in order to maintain the security of supply, energy supply to Chinese. Now, this could also help Indians because more stability to the waterway that's the lifeline of 30% of oil and energy supplies to the world, could also help Indian industries enjoy better stability in the security of supply. So altogether, this is no way a threat to anyone. This is just, in the interest of not only Iran and China, but the entire Asian continent to develop and to get stronger and to connect to each other, to lock their interest in each other. The One Belt, One Road goes through, starts from China and goes to Europe through these regional states like ours. So
Mustafa,
the
how do you
interests of our
foresee
nations
United
could lock
States
into each other.
taking this development from this point onward? Do you see US will bring any sudden change in its stubborn approach toward Iran? Or do you think Europe is going to be now more active in pursuing United States for improving the mutual relationship with Iran? Otherwise, things are going in a different direction.
Before anything else, it should be realized that Iran has not done this in order to, motivate the Americans or the Europeans. It's in the best interest of Iran. Many experts, including me, have been calling on the government and the Islamic Republic for the past decade to develop ties with the Chinese and enjoy the merits of, their lucrative markets, 1 billion strong market, and age of science technology in IT and many other areas like fast trains. The Europeans, I believe, would be more hectic in bringing, in mending, or helping resolve the differences between Iran, probably. But Americans are already angry. Joe Biden responded to a similar question, saying that we are really concerned and they are angry because they do not want to see that China and Iran as two foes or rivals of the United States are getting so closer to each other. One step ahead, the Russians would join them, and then they would, establish a coalition against the United States in various areas of politics, military, economy, and security. So this makes status in this part of the world, and the United States would be forced to step back. So they are not happy at all with this agreement.
Thank you very much, Mustafa, for participation in our program once again. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of our second segment. We will take a break and we'll join back with the last segment of our program. Stay with us. Welcome back in the last segment of the program. In my studio, I have with me Dr. Waqar Ahmed. He is Joint Executive Director, SDPI, and a leading economist in Pakistan, a major opinion maker. We are going to have a word with him about this agreement between Iran and China. Doctor, welcome to the program. Such a pleasure to have you here. You know the development between Iran and China that we have been discussing about. Please comment on it before we start our formal questions.
Thank you indeed for having me. So Iran has been finding out very innovative, out-of-box ways to really open up to the world, to the region. And certainly this recent agreement with China, of course, the details of which would be known soon in future, this is one part of that strategy with which Iran is trying to approach its partners or make potential partners. Iranian leadership was very clear at the recent D8 summit, which was of course also attended by Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan as well, where Iran said that they want to open up, and they offered a vision to the D8 that why don't we have a free trade area in the D8, which is something which did not come from other countries, and coming from Iranian leadership, which is undergoing, facing the pressures from sanctions, for example, from the EU region, from the North American region and their allies. This speaks volumes. This actually means that Iran has done certain level of homework after which they want to open up their economy. Because if, for example, you think theoretically, an economy under sanction would think twice before signing any free trade arrangement, thinking that it may be at a disadvantage. But here you have Iran, who's actually willing to offer that arrangement, willing to go beyond those limitations of sanctions, even allowing the traditional financial institutions to look into innovative means of bypassing sanctions like digital currency, digital banks. They are willing to embrace it much sooner than the other countries which do not have sanctions, for example.
Dr. Saab, it is said that China's massive economy that is expanding so rapidly, or that has expanded so rapidly, is looking for consistent fuel supplies. And these fuel supplies are going to play a very critical role for all the nations that are in the industrial, that are leading the industrial process rather. So what China is trying to do ideally is to build blocks with Russia and with Iran to make sure that fuel supply carries on and we do not lose the pace. They do not lose the pace in the coming years. How do you comment on it?
Well, absolutely. I think you're very right. And certainly fuel supplies is one of the top things on the agenda, where China understands that there's an energy market which is governed by some. And they would like to, of course, break the current structure of that limited number of people who actually control the oil, fuel, petrochemical industry. But I think it's more than that. It's energy, it's trade, it's transit, and then it's investment. And when we talk about China's ways of thinking, of giving a new narrative now to the BRI, because starting from 2014 until about 2016, BRI was something very new until the time counter narrative started to come. Now China, of course, understands that it has to have a new branding, a new narrative of going beyond the traditional BRI thinking, which the world now fully understands. Now you have these new concepts like WCPEC, which is the Western CPEC connection, as they call it, where China is looking to connect not just for its oil supplies, but also for transit as well as commercial trade linkages, connect Pakistan, Iran, then onward the neighbors of Iran as well. And I think this is a strategy in which countries like Pakistan, who, for example, have been trying to break into the Central Asian markets for so long, but given the delays in Afghan peace process, for example, we have been unfortunate in this regard. But here lies our opportunity that we and our transit or commercial trade can connect with Iranian neighbors, Iran's Western neighbors, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, and then beyond. If, for example, this Chinese investment into roads, railways, airports inside of Iran materializes. And Iran also understands that the previous promises which India had done in the context of Chabahar, in the context of Bandar Abbas ports, those projects have been hit by massive delays.
So how do you think India is going to respond to it? Because India had invested its political capital as well as its economic capital, its influence in the world, to bank on Iran, and now Iran all of a sudden has got up and embraced China with the development of such a huge project. It definitely would include, the details are not known, but we expect that it will include the development of the ports. How do you think India is going to respond to it?
Well, I think unfortunately India has been taken aback by these developments because there is very strong statements coming out of Tehran as well as Kabul that India's commitments to two things. One was Chabahar and other was the highways connecting Chabahar with the major cities within Iran and then into Herat up north into Afghanistan. That investment has not materialized, those milestones have not materialized at the pace that India had promised to both Iran as well as Afghanistan. Now you have China coming in with a far more agile systems and process, and they don't have the kind of bureaucracy which you see in, let's say, Delhi. And here you have signing a much bigger volume, and I think just saying that this many billions of dollars has been signed, and I'm sure that there will be some details in the coming days. But India also understands understands that the pace with which Chinese enter a country and deliver on the projects, they have seen it in the early harvest program of CPEC, they are seeing it in the BRI member countries in Africa, for example. India may not be able to, will certainly not be able to match that pace.
Dr. Vakar, Pakistan being a front-end partner of China, Pakistan being an old time-tested partner of China, has this now new development in its immediate neighborhood. How do you think it is going to be taken in Pakistan, and how is Pakistan going to respond to it?
Yes, I think Pakistan needs to move fast, and our business community has shown the way. Already you have seen that FPCCI has held at least 2 symposiums in this direction, indicating to the government that there is an over $5 billion of commercial trade, potential commercial trade with Iran, which really needs to be capitalized on. But then you also have...
Well, we have that US sanction problem that doesn't allow us to do trade with Iran.
Indeed. But then you see, you have to find out and look into ways which India, countries like Malaysia, have used to engage with Iran. So they said, okay, fine. If there are sanctions, we won't go ahead with G2G agreements, but we won't stop our private sector. We will allow B2B arrangements to go ahead, something which Iranian envoy in Islamabad has been continuously talking about, that look towards Qatar, look towards India, Malaysia, how they are engaging with my business community. And that's what I think Pakistan needs to do. There are firms in textile, food, light engineering sector in Pakistan who want to move into setting up plants inside Iran. They want to move and take their FDI into Iran, just like they took to Bangladesh at one point, just like they took to Tajikistan at one point, and now reaping royalties and dividends.
But is it going to supplement Pakistan's case? Is it going to augment Pakistan's situation in the region, or is it going to be a competition between Iran and Pakistan to develop their infrastructure quick and to be part of this, to be earlier part of BRI initiative? How do you take that?
I think Iran realizes that the question of competition is not there. Iran has problems of its own which are political and of strategic nature. And it has said times and times again that it requires help of its neighbors, including Pakistan and Turkey. This is what they emphasize in the D8 summit as well. This is what they continue to emphasize in the ECO summit. They were the ones who said that ECO free trade agreement should be operationalized. They were the ones who came forward with the idea of ECO central bank, ECO bank as well. So I think Iran understands that it requires help of its neighbors, and Pakistan understands that it has 85 million population in Iran waiting to be supplied with Pakistani exports. Pakistani investors can move inside. But as I said, one can think bigger than this, look towards engaging Iran's Western neighbors as well.
Dr. Bakar, the US's energy interest in the Middle East is very open. It's no secret, and it has been badly hurt by this development, least to say. How do you quickly comment on this situation?
I think US, or at least the Biden administration, certainly understand that now countries like Pakistan, including and maybe other countries in the Gulf as well, would be taking their own path in terms of the situation in Middle East, in terms of the peace process in Afghanistan, and Pakistan's role in Afghanistan. That is something which US will always require.
Fantastic. And in conclusion, how do you think Iran is going to take it forward in its stand against United States? Because we have just seen new developments happening in Europe now, convincing United States that it had in curtain and get Iran back on board. How do you think things will go on from here in the Western Bloc?
In my personal opinion, Iran would remain very. They understand that this is a new administration in Washington, and they're starting from a clean slate. And Iran is going to give that try. It's going to make that try to really have conducive relationships going forward. And this is the party now in Washington which did try to implement a plan of bringing Iran on the table as well. I'm referring to John Kerry when the last time this party was in power. So one really hopes that Tehran and Washington would work together for the peace in this region.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vakar, for being on my show. Ladies and gentlemen, the developments between Iran and China are pretty open now. The world is getting more and more open for the economic development, and the words of coercion and the notion of violence is now on the downslide. It is the high time for the world to understand that development and partnership is the new model of engaging with the developing countries. We'll join you next week with another program, and until then, Allah Hafiz.